I almost see what I do now as kind of like giant excuses. And so it's like, here's a book of stuff, and what I want you to do with this book is use it to help fuel whatever aspects of this hobby you love. You know, if that's making terrain, look at all these scenarios I'm calling for that have weird terrain you can make. If you don't, put some blocks on the table and go with it. You know, if
Right?
you love painting figures, here's an excuse to paint a bunch of figures of different types. If you love making scenarios, here's the toolbox to make scenarios. So yeah, again, it kind of goes back to that creativity and using it and loving it, and then you want to spread it. You want to help other people find that love and find that enjoyment of the hobby.
Hi, this is Naomi with Sword and Steel, and today I had a fantastic chat with Joseph A. McCullough, who is the game designer and writer for Frostgrave, Stargrave, the Silver Bayonet, Oathmark, and its expansions, and I wanted to share that with you. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Joe.
Hello.
What would you want people to say is what your works are?
Yeah, so it's funny. I tend to think of myself as a writer, but I suppose really I'm a game designer. I guess because I always wanted to be a writer, and I kind of finally found my niche in writing games, designing games. It's kind of the same thing for me since my games are presented as books. So yeah, I guess I'm best known as the creator of Frostgrave and Stargrave, and a few others, Rangers of Shadowdeep and the Silver Bayonet, and I just can't seem to stop. So
Is it intoxicating? Once you've started, you're just like, I'm just gonna
it's
keep going.
yes. I mean, I guess there's a couple of things. One, there's just a real joy in the act of creativity, and so yeah, once you kind of stretch your brain out and practice at creativity, it becomes just this really enjoyable act in and of itself, and you want to keep doing it. And also, you get, as an author, I get that kind of every so often dopamine hit of a new book. My wife always gets on me because she's like, you know, your job actually produces a physical result, and so you can say, look, this is what I've done. Whereas,
That is true.
her job, she's a teacher. She's actually doing something massively more
Oh,
important.
she's a teacher. That is
It's hard to see
important.
it.
Wow.
She's a teacher. Yep.
Well, that's really nice that you're able to do what you always
Yeah.
wanted to do. Not everyone can say that, so that's
Yeah.
really nice.
It's
So how often or how long have you been in the wargaming community?
that's kind of a hard question to answer. I got into gaming when I was about 9, so close to 40 years ago. But I originally started kind of with D&D and role playing games because that's what was going on in the U.S.
Yep.
in the late 80s,
That's
early
what
90s.
was there.
And yeah, you had a little bit of wargaming that kind of grew out of that, but as a hobby, it didn't fully exist. And, we got a few things. We got White Dwarf magazine, and I would buy it occasionally, but I could only kind of understand it, both because the language they used was very strange, even for being English, and I just didn't
Right.
understand the games themselves and stuff. But I still really loved it, and so I probably bought. I remember I bought I ordered the plastic Imperial Guard box set, the original one. Yeah.
Oh,
So
nice.
that was the first time I think I got
That
pure
one.
wargaming figures. So, but I think even before that, I mean,
Do you still have
I've
those,
got
or
a
are
few
they?
broken bits of them. Well, they're back home in the U.S., but there are a few still hanging around. They're pretty miserably painted and probably a little gloppy from glue, but they're beautiful for that. So, but me and my friend, and he bought the original Space Marine box, and we did a few trades, but we just made up our own rules. So we did
Oh,
War
nice.
Game, but we didn't have any other rules other than the ones
Yeah,
we played with ourselves.
Oh, so you were making up rules
Yeah, absolutely.
before
I
you.
mean, the rules were, like, roll some dice. If it's high, I hit you. We didn't even, it wasn't even a 4+. It was just like, roll the die and see what happens. It's like, that's high, you're hit. So, But I mean, I think that's really where everybody starts.
Works perfect.
Isn't it? You start by making up rules
Right.
for yourself, and yeah, then you write them down, and that's
I've helped a lot of people learn new rules, and that's just where everyone should
it is.
start, really. Don't bog yourself down with everything.
Because I mean, it's the results that are fun, and seeing what happens, and this kind of emerging story. You don't want to worry too much about the rules.
That's why I very much enjoy the story. I can see the role play aspect that you have brought out in these books. It's not, I suppose, full on role play, but I can see the potential it has for complete role playing. So I like that part. That's one of my favorite parts of your series of books.
I think that's always been one of my kind of design goals, was to see how far I can push wargaming towards role playing. I guess because as I said, I was kind of a born role player, and then especially when I moved to England, got involved in this culture over here, which is much more.
Is it very different there? I've never been.
It is.
I've never been yet.
I suppose gaming in the U.S., if you're talking about tabletop gaming, really grows out of Dungeons and Dragons, and everything that kind of comes after that.
In the U.S.?
In the U.S., and it kind of looks back towards that.
I feel around where I am is about the same, that it all branched. I mean, I might be completely biased because that's how I started, but it feels
I think that's
right.
true. I mean, if you look at your biggest conventions like Gen Con, Gen Con was it was a wargaming thing originally, but really it for a long time it was a Dungeons and Dragons role-playing, and now it's the big gaming convention in the country. Over here, I guess hobby gaming, again, started with D&D because Games Workshop was importing it, but then Games Workshop became something else and took the kind of hobby gaming industry of Britain with it, and so that it kind of reset everything over here. So in Britain, if you're talking I'm a tabletop gamer, you're probably a wargamer, whereas in the US, I think traditionally anyway, you're probably a role player. You might be a collectible card gamer now, but so I think I feel there's two very different kind of traditions, and then also in the UK, you've still got more of a playing with toy soldiers historical bent as well. So,
I was about to ask, is there a lot of historical
that's
wargaming
still huge.
there?
So in a month or so, I'll be at Salute, and if you walk around Salute, it's still primarily historical, although there's a lot of fantasy and sci-fi as well. But it's still a big part of the gaming scene over here. So
that actually reminds me of one of the questions people had for you. Where do you draw your most inspiration from?
I guess it's from the things that influenced me when I was 9 to 14, and the single biggest one is The Lord of the Rings, which my father read. Yeah, my father read that to me.
I also enjoyed Lord of the Rings.
9 probably.
Oh, great.
And 10 and 11 and 12. We requested it many times, me and my sisters. So The Lord of the Rings. The writings of Robert Louis Stevenson, especially Treasure Island, was a big one. And a little later, kind of pulp writers like Robert E. Howard and H.P. Lovecraft. I loved I loved the short episodic story nature that they brought as a form, and I think that short story form influenced both my writing at the time and now my game design, so that I kind of tend to think of scenarios in terms of short stories, and I think that's been a big help. And obviously a few movies, Aliens, which continues to be one that influences.
Oh, really, Aliens? I
guess it's the kind of military nature of it.
Everyone loves aliens. Everyone's creeped out by aliens.
Exactly. So, and I got Space Hulk at some point because of the movie Aliens, and it was, although it's not officially a game for the movie, it is kind of a game for the movie, and at least I always play it. I still play it that way.
That's fun. I think before I watched Aliens, because I watched Aliens when I was a bit older, I suppose, before I watched Aliens, I hadn't really been much for an Aliens movie person.
Right.
I was like, oh, whichever. And then I watched Aliens, and it was like, well, and the Aliens
Right.
and XCOM, the game XCOM, made it such that if there is an alien movie or a futuristic movie with people fighting things, I have to go see it.
Yeah, I'm like that. Any kind of military sci-fi I will watch, no matter how bad it is, because most of them are absolutely terrible.
Oh yes,
but
have to.
It's just like, but the armor's so cool, so like, I'm watching it.
Right?
Exactly.
It's all right.
Exactly.
They've got guns, they've got armor, they're blowing things up. It works perfect.
So yeah, I guess a lot of bad Sci-Fi Channel movies are also in Stargrave as well. You know, I'm a big. I was also a big fan of Doctor Who, even when I was living in the U.S., because I could watch it on PBS, and I think that's also why
I haven't actually followed Doctor Who yet.
So,
it's not many people haven't, but I haven't followed Doctor Who yet. Maybe because there's so many seasons. I'm like, well, if I have to watch one, then I won't have.
If
I'll have
you
to watch
watch
all
the
of them.
classic ones, they're much more kind of episodic, and it's easier to kind of dip in and out. But
Star Trek kind of thing,
it's
where
the Alien of the Week.
Star Trek same way.
But almost every kind of fourth or fifth episode of Doctor Who has the same plot, which is a group of people trapped in a whatever, attacked by whatever, you know. So it's kind of like the Aliens, except it's a different alien, and now it's an undersea base, and now it's a spaceship, and now it's a building on a desert planet. So,
that's funny.
But, you know, most of them are going to die. A few will make it out. That's.
I can see how. And that's definitely how Frostgrave and Stargrave and the Silver Bayonet are. I noticed that they have similar rule sets, not completely the same, but similar rule sets. So if you tried one, you'd probably be able to get into the other really quickly. But I like that they're all in different settings. You wanted to play in fantasy? No, not for you. Okay, let's just put horror and Napoleon era together, and there you go.
Any excuse. I have a tendency to go, I like those miniatures. I don't have a reason to use them. I'll write a game.
That's an awesome idea. That is fantastic. Here, I'm opposite. As like, I don't have a source of Napoleonic horror models yet, just because I am avoiding the metal ones that are out there right now. But now I'm looking so that so I can have some really cool miniatures for the Silver Bayonet. I have here your two most recent things, I believe.
Yep.
For Stargrave and Frostgrave. Are you working on anything right now that is under wraps?
I'm never not working on something.
Makes sense.
I am actually working on a new.
A true writer, then.
I'm working on a new Frostgrave book right now, which I can't say too much about contractually.
Oh, nice.
So 2025 will be the 10th anniversary of Frostgrave, so I'm working on something a little bit special for
nice.
that. Yeah, that's pretty incredible considering when I wrote it, I never really thought it would go anywhere. And here we are 10 years later, and I'm still working on it.
I suppose. I mean, no one really, I can't imagine, you'd have quite the hubris if you're like, you know what, this is going to be world renowned. But it is, so congratulations for that. And congratulations for your upcoming 10th anniversary. That's big news.
It is exciting.
Let's see. Another question that I have from one of the patrons is, outside the gaming industry, which are his favorite writers? And I know that you mentioned a few for your inspiration. Yeah. Are they the same, or do you have someone that you're reading now?
I certainly still love those four that I mentioned. There's certainly been others over the years. Tim Powers, if you know him, he wrote the Anubis Gates.
I don't, but I'm always up for learning.
Most famously, he wrote On Stranger Tides, which was turned into one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Don't hold that against it.
Oh, how cool!
It's an incredible work. without Captain Jack Sparrow in it.
Well, I'm one. I haven't watched all of the.
You might not have made it to this one.
Oh, well, shame. I haven't watched.
So it's one of the later ones.
I haven't watched all of the Pirates movies, but I enjoyed them. So I am all for reading the inspiration of them, because the book's going to be fantastic.
He's a very... His books include more plot per page than I think I've seen anywhere else. They're just so filled with ideas.
Really?
Yeah.
How interesting.
They're not always the easiest reads, because they are quite dense in terms of ideas, but definitely worth the journey. I read everything that Jack Campbell puts out. He wrote a series called The Lost Fleet, which is probably one of my favorite military sci-fi series, despite the fact the main character literally never leaves his ship in like 6 books. But it's all about
no away missions.
Well, there are, but he doesn't go on them because he's the fleet admiral. So, but it's a really neat idea of basically this giant fleet gets trapped behind enemy lines and has to get back home, and he's this guy who's been floating in an escape pod for 100 years. So basically, he was right at the start of this war, and they find him 100 years later, and this war's lasted 100 years, and they bring him back, and he's like, oh my gosh, what the heck has become of you people in 100 years? So it's got kind of elements of King Arthur's The Legend of, he'll return when he's needed most, and
that's really cute.
The original 6 books, because there's like 20 of them now, but the first 6 books form one story, and they're highly worth reading. I also read anything, all of Dan Abnett's Gaunt's Ghosts. Absolutely fantastic. I will buy anything he writes for that series immediately.
Yeah, I understand. Gaunt's Ghosts, back to your original Imperial Guard then?
Exactly. And it's just, it's military sci-fi with monsters thrown in, so it's right up my alley. So
right, I very much I gave him a bit of a hard time for his original Horus Heresy books, because they're like, everything is happening all over the place. You go from 1 month and then 5 months later, and then back to the first one, and then back to you don't know what. But I read them anyway, but I absolutely adore his Eisenhorn and Rylanor series.
Yeah.
And I'm working on the Beckwin series. And I haven't done the Gaunt's Ghosts yet.
Haven't you? Oh, well, you've got a lot to look forward to. So just don't get too attached to many of the characters. But also, I read constantly. That's basically my main hobby, and if it's like my default setting.
I had to put my books down. I understand. I'm completely the same way. I had to put my books down so I actually got something done, because I'm just reading all the time.
I'm like, I don't have anything to do. Well, there's a book. So, I'll try anything.
Right?
Really.
I never have. I can't imagine someone who doesn't have anything to do. I never have nothing to do.
Look at this pile of books.
And I suppose as a writer, it
exactly. I can justify it. But this is work.
Right?
Totally
that's
work.
true. You can absolutely justify it. I need to read these 100 next books, because what if I get an idea?
Exactly.
I understand. It's not rationalization at all.
Exactly.
The next person says, what was the inspiration to create Frostgrave Ghost Archipelago rules, and what does he consider the key differences between the two settings?
Okay. First off, I got to admit, when we named the game Archipelago, I didn't realize it was a word that most people just had never used, because about half the people I encounter have no idea.
Got that, did you?
Like,
I thought I was so suave.
No, a lot of people get that one wrong. So, it's interesting. So originally, Phil Smith, who's now kind of in charge of Osprey Games, and at the time who was just kind of the editor for War Games, and commissioned Frostgrave, said to me, "Why don't you do Frostgrave but in another setting?" And originally I was kind of like, I don't really want to do that, because to me it was like, well, that's nothing more than a book of monsters, because it's just Frostgrave, but now it's hot. But then I was like, I do really like jungles, and I guess it kind of went back to Robert Louis Stevenson and pirates and kind of things like that, and it got into my head, but it didn't really, it didn't get anywhere until I had this idea of, well, I knew I didn't want kind of the wizards in Ghost Archipelago because the wizards belong in Frostgrave. They're there because there's magic stuff they're looking for. So I was like, well, who is it that's going to go to a chain of island filled with pirates and dinosaurs and snake men and stuff? Somebody who's pretty desperate. And then I kind of was thinking about the great explorers and the search for the Fountain of Youth. And I thought, well, maybe they're looking for something kind of like the Fountain of Youth, except I'll make it, the Fountain of Superpowers, And then I thought, but I don't want fully superpowered people. I don't want to write a game about superheroes. So that gave me the idea of kind of that there were
now you
people.
have to do that, right?
Exactly. But I had this idea that there were people who went and found this pool of superheroes and became superheroes. But that was several centuries before, and now we've kind of gotten down to their great-great-grandkids who only have this kind of little bit of spark of that power left. And I thought they're the ones who might want to go back to this deadly chain of islands and find that pool. And then I had the idea that the islands themselves disappear and reappear every so often. That's why people don't always go looking for these superpowers. And so it all just kind of came together piece by piece, and until I had something that I thought, well, this is actually sufficiently different that I want to write it. And mechanically it works very different because your main heroes aren't wizards, and thus you play with them very differently. They're more like, pulp heroes and kind of the Conan, Sinbad kind of vein. But there's some interesting mechanics there. Looking back on it now, because obviously it's 7 years old or something, there's a few things that I'm not 100% happy with. I wouldn't have done the way mechanically I did. That said, it works fine. I just could have done it a little bit better. But it has an interesting element of pressing your luck when you use your powers. So, go ahead.
I suppose each book that you do and you get feedback for it when people are playing teaches you something. Do you have? Do you get a lot of feedback? Do you go out and search for it, or do you like, you know what? I don't want to see it. I hope they like it.
It depends. It depends on where my mood is at the.
Yeah, I suppose.
So generally, I'm very active in the community surrounding my games, especially on Facebook, but I try to do other places. And yeah, there's a little bit of every time somebody says, well, on page 94 it says this, but it doesn't work. I'm a failure. I failed completely. As the years have gone on, I've gotten better at taking that and going, okay, yeah, actually, either I could have written that better, or so sometimes it's just actually they've missed something, or they're not reading it quite right. But sometimes I have actually made a mistake, and that's good because that does help me improve, and then I can put out an errata and fix it next time. I will say, so when Oathmark came out, because Oathmark literally came out in Britain the same month we went into lockdown for COVID, which was both horrendous for the game coming out.
Harsh.
Yeah, people couldn't play it, and but when I went online for that, and I saw some of the, not criticisms, some of it was criticism, some of it was just comments and stuff, I realized wow, I'm really not in a place I can handle this. Probably because it looked like the rest of the world was falling apart, and for a lot of people that gaming was an escape. For me, it was my job, and it was not a good time. Not a good time. So I probably didn't interact with that game as much in the first year or so it came out as I do with most of my games, because I just wasn't in a place where I could fully handle it. But I'm trying to make up for that, and I suppose, get back to it a bit. So.
Well, I'm assuming that a lot of the first comments would be people who are also in the same boat and not feeling very good. So just ignore those and go with the later ones.
But it is good because you get this. First off, I should say that gaming as a gamers as a group, and certainly the gamers that kind of surround my games, are incredibly willing to accept that things aren't perfect. That things may have to be errated.
We have a great community, don't we?
We do. We absolutely do. And so, like, actually, if I go back to it, the original Frostgrave has more, not necessarily errors, but problems or bad writing or stuff, because it was the first thing I did, and I didn't know what I was doing. But people were so willing to work with that because they just kind of liked the ideas behind it. And that was just so eye-opening to me and made me really love the hobby even more than I did before. I guess because it was like, hey, there's a lot of people like me out there that, are willing to take this and play with it and realize that the goal is fun. And whatever we can do to make this fun is therefore right. It doesn't matter if the rules specifically says this. We're going to change that, and that's still kind of how I operate.
I am regularly amazed by the amount of creativity for games that is out there. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, I almost see what I do now as kind of like giant excuses. And so it's like, here's a book of stuff, and what I want you to do with this book is use it to help fuel whatever aspects of this hobby you love. If that's making terrain, look at all these scenarios I'm calling for that have weird terrain you can make. If you don't, put some blocks on the table and go with it. If you love painting figures, here's an excuse to paint a bunch of figures of different types. If you love making scenarios, here's the toolbox to make scenarios. So yeah, again, it kind of goes back to that creativity and using it and loving it, and then you want to spread it. You want to help other people find that love and find that enjoyment of the hobby. In whichever, we have such an incredibly diverse hobby. There's so many different ways.
It is,
to
isn't
enjoy
it?
So,
which is great for someone like me who just hops from one thing to another.
Exactly.
All over the place.
Exactly. So it's been a lot of fun.
What is your favorite part of the hobby then? Other than writing, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I guess it was always writing. That's why I do it so extensively. Beyond that, I love figure painting.
Oh yeah.
The older I've gotten, I've kind of started to move. I never batch paint anymore. I can't do it. I don't enjoy it.
No?
Nope, I can't. So me painting an army is a multi-year experience because I have to paint each figure individually, one by one. But actually, I've found as long as you accept that this is going to take me 2 years, you can do that. But my main
everyone likes the hobby a different way.
Exactly.
No bad way to do it.
My main enjoyment now is finding one figure, and I'm going to devote all my kind of intention and effort on that. And I'm, after doing this for 30 years, I'm a pretty good figure painter. That said, I'm not an artist.
Nice.
I'm not going to win any awards, and but I'm very happy with what I do. But what I love is while I'm working on that figure, because I've been painting so long, it's more of a craft, and I don't have to think about it very much. So my brain is really free to roam, and as I do that, I do start to think like, well, what rules could I make for this figure, or what scenarios,
right?
Or what has he got on his belt there? Is that a magic item that I should make up? And so I love.
Oh, that must be so much fun.
It is, and everybody can do it. That's the thing, and that's just what I love. So I love that. Again, it's all mixed up together. That me painting this figure is fueling me writing, and me writing is making me want to go buy more figures.
You have a notepad everywhere?
I do. It's sitting right here.
How do you keep track of it?
Well, I mean, I do actually end up sitting in front of a computer every day to write, so I don't have to remember things very long for the most part. But I do keep a notepad open on my desk literally all the time. I'm a big fan of handwriting and writing things in longhand, so it's always a joy to jot some notes down. And I also collect notebooks, that most of which are empty, but so it's like, ooh, a new notebook.
You collect notebooks? That's cute.
It's a possibility, it isn't filled with anything now, but one day it could be filled with things. So
I just realized that I have Also, also have a few empty notebooks. I didn't think about that until you said so.
It's so nice.
I'm like, I don't say I collect notebooks, and I've got like 6 or 7. How many do you have?
Yeah, we won't talk about that right now. But I'm pretty good at like. I actually tend to buy them, and then I'll hold them for a while, and like occasionally they get gifted because I'm like, man, I gotta decrease the number of notebooks I got lying around here.
I can see it now. You have a notebook. It's like, I'm gonna use that, and then you're like, but for what?
Yeah, that is very much the case. And I've got a lot of notebooks that like I've written one page in and then ripped that page out because like this is what my notebook's gonna be for, and then I'm like, no, I'm not gonna fill up a notebook full of that. So, but now it's tainted, so I gotta get rid of that page.
That's funny. You could have just kept it in there.
I could have, but
folded
I don't.
it up, curled it up.
But then
folded.
It won't be the notebook about whatever because it'll have this weird random page in the front. So, gotta keep my notebooks pure.
I would always be wondering. I'd forget what I wrote in that one page, and I'd always be wondering, what did I write? I wouldn't be able to do that.
There's a good story there, actually, the missing page. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, that is all the questions I have for you.
All right.
And I really appreciate you coming to chat with me. Thank you for reaching out. And thank you for making the books. You reached out to thank me for doing the review. That's nothing compared to all the work you put into these guys. I'm going to keep showing them off. Aha. These are all the ones that I have other than the Silver Bayonet ones that are somewhere around.
No, I do appreciate it.
I very much like your work, and I am excited to see everything that you put out.
It's a great hobby, and I'm just so happy to be a part of it, and I'm really thankful to people like you that do, talk about my work because it can be very hard to, get heard in this hobby where you've got a few giants making a lot of noise all the time. And I just kind of want to say, look.
Well, that means I should say this again. Ha!
Yeah, it is coming soon.
These are the most recent books that he's got.
In fact,
Mortal Enemies for Frostgrave.
I don't even have Mortal Enemies. I don't have a copy of that. I assume I'll get
because
one soon,
Osprey Games gave me this copy. I just got this copy. Ha! It's mine.
You gotta have a copy.
I'm so special.
There's gonna be an email after this.
I'm so. And one day when I'm going to have to ship these out to you, and I'm gonna get you to sign them, and then you're gonna send them back to me. That's happening.
Well, hopefully one day I'll get over there
and they'll
meet at a convention or something. So.
Right.
Yep.
I would love to go to. I haven't gone to any conventions yet,
haven't you?
But one day I am making it happen.
That's for pure.
That's the plan.
For pure
that is absolutely the first one.
That's the one I would go to. I love
right?
Gen Con, although Gen Con is so massive, it's a bit hard to take.
I can't imagine going to one that doesn't have miniatures in it. For me, it'd be like, what's the point? No one's painting. No one's got minis.
No, you definitely want to go to a Adepticon.
not to offend anyone who goes to those, but for me, it's like I want to see minis. I want to see paints. I want to see people fighting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, thank you for coming.
Yep.
And I will let you go. Otherwise, we will be talking forever wargaming.
Yep.
I could go on for hours. And I hope you have a fantastic time writing.
Thank you.
And feel free to message me anytime you have new ideas. And, need someone to... I won't say it. I won't tell anyone. I won't tell anyone what
Thanks for having me.
I love reading.
Yep.
All right.
It's been great.
And have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching the video. Make certain to like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this conversation. If you wanted to have more such podcasts where I bring in charming individuals like Joe, make certain to let me know in the comments below. I enjoyed myself. I hope you did too. If you would like to support the channel, The hows to do that are in the description. To all those who already support the channel, I really appreciate your support. As always, sorry that I haven't had many videos out recently because I sprained my ankle and that complicated things, but I'm mostly all better, so we're gonna get more content out now. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.